歡迎各位嚇。
Members, good afternoon this time, and we have a quorum. First of all, since last meeting, the Secretariat has not received, or rather has not issued any information paper. Everything, is quiet in a way. Item 2 on the agenda, date of next meeting and items for discussion. At the next June regular meeting, we're going to take up 2 items, amendments to the Electronic Transactions Ordinance and follow-up measures to implement the Telecommunications Amendment Ordinance 2021, which is about the real name SIM card. Date of meeting, the 13th of June, Monday, 2:30. So 2 hours earlier than today's meeting, 4:30. Members, do you have any views on the 2 proposed items? If not, then we'll take up those 2 meetings at a meeting on the 13th of June. Amendments to the Electronic Transactions Ordinance and follow-up measures to implement the Telecommunications Amendment Ordinance 2021. Item 3, update on smart city and digital economy development. First, I'd like to invite the administration to join us. And members, if you wish to ask questions, you could press the request to speak button now. First, let's invite the administration to join us. Well, we have ample time today, so 4 minutes each for answers and questions for each member. Take your time, Secretary. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary, and your team. I now hand over the floor to you to give us an update on smart city and digital economy development. Mr. Chairman, members, I'm so happy to be at this meeting today so we could update you on smart city and digital economy development. In 2017, since this term of government assumed office, we've been proactively promoting smart city and the digital economy. We've invested heavily in various initiatives to support innovation, technology, and digital economy. We've also put in place a large number of initiatives and measures. For example, in December 2017, this government published the first edition of Smart City Blueprint for Hong Kong, and then in 2020 we published Blueprint 2.0. Since the publication of the Blueprint 2.0, the various departments have been actively taking forward the various initiatives. So far, some 40% of the work has been completed or is ongoing, and the remaining work is also in the implementation stage. We will continue to coordinate different departments and bureaus in implementing all these measures, and we will also be updating the new targets and initiatives under 2.0 to have regard to the latest development in Hong Kong. And then we also plan to review the Blueprint 2.0 comprehensively next year, and then we will start preparation of Blueprint 3.0 so we could continue with the development of smart city in Hong Kong. To support smart city development, this term of government has put in place various important smart city infrastructures. For example, I Am Smart, which is a one-stop personalized digital services platform, and also the new generation government cloud infrastructure services and big data analytics platform. This year, in the middle of this year, we're going to launch a shared blockchain platform to facilitate application of advanced technology in all government departments on all fronts. And then we're going to launch complete with the installation of smart Lamppost. The aim is to complete the installation by the end of next year. And then data center is also important for promoting digital economy. In September 28, we have opened up government data through the our portal so that we could facilitate use by the public as soon as possible. That's the data.gov.hk portal. And then this portal has been very popular among the public. The government has seen some 21 billion downloads in 2021. And then we could see that for e-payment and e-commerce, they are becoming increasingly popular. So we want to further promote the development of e-payments and e-commerce. The government is taking the lead, and we are now allowing many more different forms of payment. For example, government bills such as tax payments, rates payment, government rent, or water charges payment. We have now various. We have included faster payment system (FPS) as a form of payment, and 80% of the government departments have provided FPS as a payment option. And in future, we're going to launch this to cover more services, and then. In the budget this year, it's been announced that the Financial Secretary is going to lead a Digital Economy Development Committee with the participation of industry practitioners, expert scholars, and relevant government officials. We will actively taking forward the preparatory work of the committee. So that's all by way of brief introduction. I and my colleagues are more than happy to answer members' questions. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. 7 members have indicated the wish to ask questions. I'll read out the list first. Mr. Michael Look, Mr. Michael Lam, Mr. Kenneth Falk, Mr. Duncan Chiu, Mr. Sunny Tan, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, and Dr. Johnny Ng. First, Mr. Michael Look. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask about the 2 most commonly used applications. One is, of course, Leave Home Safe. You could call these 2 apps a flagship. We have seen cluster involving 190 customers at the Golden Peony restaurant. The Department of Health could only contact all the customers by the 11th of May. It's because so far we've launched this Leave Home Safe app for so long, but there's no tracking function. Now, of course, people have to scan the Leave Home Safe app and their vaccination record before they could go into eating premises. But if there's a tracking function with the Leave Home Safe app, then you would have been able to trace all the customers soon, and you won't allow some of them to have left Hong Kong. So because could be a major source for the 6th wave of outbreak. We've talked about it for many times, and even the personal data privacy Commissioner has said that tracking function is not infringement of privacy. I think most people have come to accept that. And now with with order restore, we don't see people trying to scaremonger, to engage in scaremongering. So should we not take this extra step, and include a tracking function? But of course, I hope with an update you won't create a bug, because I've seen a red alert too when I try to enter a certain premises. It's really embarrassing. I'm sure many of us have been through that experience. So that's the first thing about the Leave Home Safe app. The other is the IM Smart app. It's definitely the flagship app of the government. But so far, only there are 1.3 million users. In Hong Kong, we have a population of 7 million. So when do you have a timetable? So IM Smart will become an app like the Leave Home Safe app that everybody uses every day. Well, why did I install this app? Because one day members arranged to take the vaccine, and then their colleagues suggested, the workers there suggested we could install this, so I installed the IM Smart. So could you have more counters doing that? For example, if you go for car registration or a new ID card, you could ask them, you could suggest that they install IM Smart, and then you could immediately boost the number of users of the app. Okay, so KPI, about boosting the number of users. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Michael Look, for setting an example to use online services of Hong government, such as Leave Home Safe app, IM Smart. Now, for Leave Home Safe app, it was launched because it's to give risk notification to the public. For example, if you've been to a certain place, and at a particular place there were high risk or infected individuals who've been then we could notify people automatically. And now, of course, we have the vaccine pass in place, and the Leave Home Safe app is serving the function too, because when you go to certain scheduled premises or designated premises, you have to show your vaccination record before you're allowed entry to certain premises. And then for the venue operators, because they have scanned your vaccine pass, and so with on the vaccine pass, there's the real name, and there's also contact means. So if the vaccine pass is scanned, that is actually real-time registration of your movement history. Now, Mr. Michael Locke mentioned Golden Peony restaurant. In fact, immediately, there were over 500 customers who went to Golden Peony. Immediately, we passed on information of these 500 plus people to the contact tracing office. That's why it is a very short time we were able to track the 190 people who've been there. So, therefore, the Leave Home Safe app now actually has the function of real name tracking. And that would help the contact tracing office to trace contacts or cases. For the I'm Smart, yes, we were working very hard on that. We have some 1.3 million registered users now. Of course, we would like to see a high number. But as you know, with any new government app, it would be demand-led. That's why Mr. Michael Locke has made a very good suggestion. Now, say a transport department, licensing offices, people queue up, and if they think that, I'm Smart would help save them time, then may be interested. So we'll do what you suggested, Mr. Locke. But of course, when we still had the different waves of the epidemic, we were very careful about offering counter services to help people register I'm Smart, but please give us some time. We will be boosting our effort in that respect. At the right time, at right place, we will be actively promoting I'm Smart for the convenience of the public. Do you have KPIs? Say for I'm Smart, people will find that we get $3 or $4 off the fee, or maybe $10 off tax payment. That's what Tencent did. They gave out red packets to give incentives to people to use their service. Well, please allow us to think about that, Chairman. As you know, it involves the use of public money. If we are to offer incentive, we may have to come back to LegCo and seek your support. But anyway, during the epidemic, we saw registration of 1.3 million users, so I'm really confident. There are now some 200 online services on the app, and as people use the I'm Smart and they see it's really convenient, they will help to promote the app too, just like just now Mr. Michael was helping us to promote the use of the app. And also when we go to different offices where people apply for licenses and so on, and we promote the I'm Smart, I believe that's the best way for us to promote the I'm Smart to the public, which is effective use of public funds. Mr. Michael Lam. Now, I have 2 points to make. One is the multifunctional smart lamppost pilot scheme. Now, this scheme has been around for a long time, but somehow it's still just a pilot scheme. And it said in the paper that there will be another 300 lampposts to be installed by 2023. So in total, there are just 400 lampposts. But in other places like Singapore, they have tens of thousands of smart lampposts to be installed. So are we not moving a bit too slowly? And in Old District, maybe it's difficult to replace some existing lampposts, but can we plan further ahead? For example, for the Northern Metropolis, I'm sure the planning will be moving in the direction of smart city, and then there will be the Sentin Technopole, and then it's going to be an important place for reindustrialization. So can you make plans well in advance for an installation of smart lampposts in these new areas instead of just keeping to this pilot scheme, because then you will be moving too slowly. And then for the whole smart lamppost scheme is really to improve public services. Several years ago we started talking about smart lampposts, and there was much concern expressed about privacy among the public. Now, with some active publicity and promotion by the government, we've seen some improvement. But how can we convince the public further that the information to be gathered by the smart lamppost has something to do with us, to do with me, for example? Now, of course, there's positioning, global positioning service, the weather data, and so on. But that people can relate to that. So how can you explain it to the public that the smart lamppost would offer them more further convenience? The other is about the I'm Smart. In the paper, it mentions that there are some 1.3 million registered users. But if you look at the rating, say at the Apple App Store, 5 is the highest marker, so the rating is just 1.7. Google Play is just 2.1. If you look at the various discussion forums, people would say that it's impossible to get a photo of the ID card. They think it's a trick, really. So can you not collect public views and make improvement to the app? Now, if we still keep at just 1.3 million registered users, even if you offer more services, not many people will be using them, so it would be a waste of resources. So can you try to improve the app and make it more appealing to more people?
Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your reminder and suggestions. Talking about smart lampposts, we see eye to eye with Mr. Lam. These smart lampposts are an infrastructure facility in support of public sector and private sector organizations to install some smart applications. For example, we can get information on the traffic, and we can install 5G facilities in the lampposts as well. So we are adopting a demand-led approach in all districts. The existing lampposts, if they are going to be replaced by smart lampposts, extra costs may be involved. But then in new districts like the Northern Metropolis and the new development areas, the smart lampposts will cost at the same amount as existing lampposts. So we are going to promote smart lampposts proactively in new districts, but then in old districts, we will take a demand-led approach. And then for I Am Smart, we have heard Mr. Lam's views as to how we can try to bring more benefits and convenience to public. We will try to do that. Now, some 200 online services are now on the platform, and banking and other private services are also on the platform. And security is a major concern. Mr. Lam talked about taking identity card number from several angles to make sure that your identity is really protected. We'll try to strike a balance. We would advance with the times. We will try to bring benefits to the public, and at the same time, we want to make sure that the platform is secure. Next one, Mr. Kenneth Falk. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Secretary. The paper talks about the latest situation on smart city and digital economy. And digital economy is a very hot issue. At the two sessions in Beijing, the country expressed its great concern about digital economy development. I'm not an IT person, but digital economy is about using data and big data analytics to improve the existing ecosystems. I think the digital economy and the government's big data analytics platform can help government make decisions. I am concerned about issues relating to the culture and sports sector. I know that in the U.S. and Europe, at Broadway, they've been very advanced in the big data analytics. They will come up with data on the preferences of people in watching films over the weekends and so on. So those in the cultural sector can make a lot of good analysis. So based on the customers' needs, they come up with films and stage performances to suit the needs of the customers in a particular district. So I don't want to just talk merely about optics. Well, optics is something very outdated. So I'm not going to complain here. I think it should not just be a platform for selling tickets. It should come up with data for us to analyze the customers or the audience, age groups, preferences, and so on. I hope that the government can really do something to meet the needs of the sector. Second point about I Am Smart, 1.3 million registered users. I'm one of them. How many of them are active users? I am concerned about booking of venues, and when I press a button, well, it's just a link to the LCSD's venue booking website. Well, I might just as well go directly to the LCSD's booking webpage. I agree with the chairman that you should offer some privileges to people who are users. I think the government should look into that. So you should provide incentives for people to register as users. And then there is a recent case. Let me mention this. A sports coach applied for the 6th round of the AEF, Anti-Epidemic Fund. Well, there are only two ways that he can do it. He can mail the application, or he can visit the office in person. But then, well, his mail got lost last time, so he didn't get any subsidy. So, well, this morning I attended a meeting of a government advisory committee. Members have raised this for 2 years. Can we make the application online? We get the same answer all the time. Well, we are looking into it. Submission of forms through online means. I think the government should really look into that seriously. Thank you, Mr. Fogg, for your reminder. Mr. Fogg referred to about cultural services. How can we provide more information to members of the public? This is in line with our thinking. We have this big data analytics platform. That's exactly to help government departments to analyze data. And what's more important is that in relation to the open data policy of the government, we're doing much, and that is very important. In the course of doing so, if you can collaborate with the private sector, we'll be able to achieve even better results. Well, we'll try to open up as much data as possible. We will engage the sector to help us consolidate the data, and they might even become developing an app for this sector. Well, 4,900 data sets have been opened up, and the number of downloads had exceeded 21 billion in a year. So through opening up data, we would try to encourage the private sector to develop more apps. So what Mr. Fox said is exactly what we are trying to do. We hope that the private sector can use the open data and provide more services to the public. So it's not, the services do not directly from the government. We try to engage different sectors to provide more services. Now, second, about big data analytics platform, we try to analyze the data and share them with the sector. In terms of booking LCSD venues, the LCSD has been working through I Am Smart to provide more convenience in booking venues for users. Well, I'll pause here. I'll see whether the the government chief information officer has anything to add. Let me respond on two aspects. Mr. Fogg referred to government departments using digital technologies. We have big regard to that. The secretary talked about opening up of data, and then there are also big data held by the government departments. The two sides supplement each other. While the daily download of open data is 100 million, and people may be using our data, but they may not be aware of it because they are working through some apps in the market. And the BDAP was launched in the end of 2020. Now we're working on 15 projects. The number, these are not sufficient. There are still a lot of opportunities. And in the budget this year, we have talked about launching an e-government audit. And every government department will go through this audit process, especially in relation to the application of big data, blockchain, and so on and so forth. And through this audit, we would like to launch more big data analytics programs. So after the audit, we will launch more programs, and then the next 2 to 3 years, we will triple or even quadruple the number of big data analytics programs to be launched. We might have to enhance the efforts of providing online services of government departments. Our plan is that in the next 2 to 3 months, applications for all government services online will be made available. But then there might be some legal constraints in doing that. And for some government departments, their computer system may not be able to cope with it. So they may not be able to achieve it by the middle of this year. But our guess is that around 90% of government services in the middle of this year can be applied online. We have 13 members who would like to speak. 3 have spoken. I'll have to draw a line, or else we'll go over time. The next one, Mr. Duncan Chiu. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary. I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of points to make. We have high expectations on digital economic development in Hong Kong. IMD from Switzerland in 2021. Our ranking in terms of smart cities is 41st, and we have dropped by 9 places. So we have a lot to catch up. In this morning's Smart City subcommittee, I have also spoken about this. So we are talking about the Blueprint 3.0. We have the efficiency unit, which will help the government departments to do more. So you can't share a lot of data yet. And a lot of members talk about I am smart. And then the figure of 1.3 million stays flat for a while. And then for e-health, it's 5 million subscribers. So how can we do better? Can we really use it as a e-identity card? There is so much to be done yet. So it's important that we come up with the Blueprint 3.0. It's very important. And then fiber to the house initiative. The fiber-based network has reached only up to the entrances of villages. So you haven't come up with a solution of how to connect the fiber to the homes, individual homes. And then you are going to replace the cameras with LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology. I think all these have to be incorporated into the 3.0 version. And then data center. My peers told me that there aren't many industrial buildings which can be turned into data centers in Hong Kong. So would this also be considered under the Blueprint 3.0 plan? And then another issue about perceptions. the Secretary talked about bringing benefits and convenience to Hong Kong people. If we adopt a result-oriented approach, well, I think we should have some common goals and results, and the result should be that it should bring benefits and convenience to Hong Kong people. You have this figure, say the downloads of $2.1 billion. People don't have an idea of what this is all about. I think what matters more is that how you can encourage people to use more of these services, and then people will really feel for themselves the benefits of the smart blueprint. And then we have the EGCI, Hong Kong Guangdong Expert Groups on Cooperation in Informatizations, paragraph 26. Meetings held frequently. Cross-boundary collaboration, how is that going on? We need a lot of collaborative projects with mainland cities. So I would like to learn about the frequency of the meetings in that particular platform.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chiu. While he represents the information technology sector, of course, we've been working closely together. Now, you mentioned our international ranking. In terms of smart city, where yes, we keep learning, but then perhaps there are other rankings that could see that. So to let you see that Hong Kong has an edge over others. It's still the IMD assessment in 2020. Our global our digital competitiveness is ranked second around the world and first in Asia. So we need to do more, of course, to speed up the development of smart city. But in terms of infrastructure, we're doing rather well. And that gives us solid foundation for further development. Now, I'd like to respond to Mr. Chiu's point about perception. Yes, that's important. How can we let the public see and feel what we're doing about smart city? So that's why I've been telling my team this year, what is it that we need most? So for residents in remote villages, they may not be able to benefit from the digital age. I understand for extension of 5G network to villages, my colleagues will be talking to you about that later in a later item. And then for our colleagues, we have been extending Wi-Fi coverage to villages, so that for those in need, they will be able to benefit from such development, and we will continue to work on that. Mr. Chiu mentioned data centers. Hong Kong is ranked 6th in terms of data center business around the world and 2nd in Asia. So we have plenty of potential for further development. We have now some 700,000 square meters of data center space through various policies such as offering new landlord or conversion of existing industrial buildings. By 2026, we should have 1.499 square meters of data center space. That is doubling the existing area. And that should help to support our digital competitiveness. So we hope members will give us more support, and then we could do even better in future. Thank you. Next, Mr. Sunny Tan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Secretary. A number of issues. First one, I'm smart, but the business version. Now, for individuals, we use our ID card as a unique ID, but then in trades and commerce, there are various certification methods. I understand Hong Kong MA has such a certification product too. Now, we are reviewing the issues we see with the personalized I'm Smart app. So I hope you will learn from that, and then when you launch the business I'm Smart, then it will work better and be more popular among people. That's the first point. Second point, I share Mr. Duncan Chiu's concern about data centers. Now, I think we're going to see an increasing demand for data center space. Perhaps in Blueprint 3.0, you may have to review if the figure or the demand would far exceed what you have planned for. Otherwise, it would create a problem. Third point about smart people. Education, publicity, of course, and something you need to do, but what about big data? How can we make use of big data to educate students more effectively? Maybe we could use data to assess the performance of teachers and schools as a whole. I think that would be a useful way, but there's not much mentioned here. So maybe in Blueprint 3.0, would we see that? Now that's going to be blueprint for smart city. I hope there will also be a blueprint for reindustrialization. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tan. On the reindustrialization blueprint, definitely we're going to provide a comprehensive plan so you could all get involved and work together with us to make this happen. On business version of I Am Smart, as you mentioned, Mr. Tan, we are working on that. We hope the app will be useful. On the expansion of data center services, we see the potential for such development, and we are giving our full support to such development. What is important is that in Hong Kong we have enough land for the purpose, or also stability in supply and stable supply and so on. So we will continue to support the development of smart data centers. Another question is about smart people and the use of big data in educating students. Well, I don't have much information at hand. Perhaps I have to talk to the colleagues at the Education Bureau to see if we could explore various ways to better educate our next generation. Now, if I may say that in the past few 2 or 3 years, we have launched various schemes knowing more about IT programs for secondary and primary students to learn more about IT. And then at the secondary school level, we have the IT Innovation Lab in secondary schools, so we could nurture talents at the secondary school stage. And then at universities, there are STEM students or graduates because they don't know about development in the innovation and technology sector, so instead they move to the financial services sector. And now we have a STEM internship scheme, and some 40 students have taken part in the scheme. There's been good response. So we have various schemes to support the development of innovation and technology in Hong Kong. Mr. Tan, now if I may just add, for students, students have a learning competency, and there are various assessments. You could use data to analyze the assessment, and then you see where which are the areas that students could improve their learning. So there would be a precise way to do such assessment. Perhaps I could talk to you about later in detail. Okay, I have to be strict with the time limit because there are 8 more members on the waiting list. Dr. Low Wai Kwok. We're talking about the use of big data and so on to promote the development of smart city in Hong Kong. Well, it brings me back to 3 years ago. At the time, this council went to the Yangtze River Delta for a study tour. We went to Hangzhou, and then we met with many departments closely related to the day-to-day life of the public. For example, marriage office, registration of marriage offers, and so on. And people need only make one trip, and in some cases they don't even need to make a trip because they can do all the applications on their phone. It was 3 years ago. So we visited this city brain, and there's real-time data on the road condition of all the roads, if there is a traffic accident, and if someone needs medical service or first aid, emergency first aid service and so on, they would then turn all the traffic lights to green, and then the injured could be sent to the nearest medical facilities as soon as possible. So it's not just about computerizing or digitizing data and then that's the digital transformation, but rather such development must serve the needs of the public. So the government will always tell us we actually are meeting the target of smart city with certain rankings and whatever. But I think the best way to measure whether smart city is doing well is how much convenience is offered to the public. The Environment Bureau went to the Environmental Affairs panel to talk about reviewing the environmental impact assessment system. One reason why EIA takes so long is because first of all they have to start do a comparison with the benchmark. That means a particular place that may be affected by the proposed works project, they have to first do a study on the existing ecosystem and ecology, and then before they would assess the impact of the works on that. And then third step is to offer mitigation measures. But if we have big data, then we would have be able to save time and effort for the first step, because all the data would be there. We would have full graphs of information about the whole ecosystem in Hong Kong. So that's the point I raised at the Environmental Affairs panel meeting, and the administration's response was it wanted to build such a database. So we can't just be paying lip service to big data. Big data should be able to serve some real purpose. And of course, we can't just rely on a single department or bureau to collect the data, but it's for the government as a whole to mobilize their effort in collecting big data. I think that example I quoted is a very good one. If we don't build such databases, we're just paying lip service to streamlining processes or whatever. Because if we want to, say, identify suitable land for housing production or whatever, if we want to improve and streamline all the processes, we need to make good use of big data. Yes, Dr. Low was right to point out. When we do survey, Hong Kong has just 1,100 square meters. I'm sure you have drilled holes at all spots on the soil analysis. So and the data couldn't change often. So you could have released the data to all those involved in engineering. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to members for your views and reminders. That's good interaction between us. Now, of course, with big data analytics platform, we are providing a platform, but as for available useful information is really up to different departments. For example, EIA findings or soil data and so on. If the information is properly compiled, then it could be released on the platform, and I'm sure that would help the public to have better quality of living. So we should all work towards the same goal. Thank you. Dr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the many members who've spoken. With smart city development, ranking is rather superficial. More important is what the public really feel and see, and that's something real. Now, I see some problems too. So, for example, when I walk past a post office, there are always long lines of the elderly residents trying to pay their water bills and whatever. Then that's, of course, that will take points off our performance as a smart city. Now, education is, of course, very important. We have done much to educate young people, but we have an aging population. We need to make sure the elderly have access to such online services as well. So can the government do a bit more to promote the development of smart city? And then civil servants, of course, they matter much too. We talk about Internet Plus. So it's about mindset. Now we need to develop the digital mindset of civil servants. So whenever they formulate a policy, they would include the element of smart city. And it will help to speed up the development of smart city. Now, I'd like to talk about health data. The EHR has been in place for over a decade. But then it's led by the hospital authority, but then private doctors very rarely enter information into the system. In the past, because of technology limitations, we can't do that much because of the concern about privacy. But now we have blockchain technology, so it's not just about the public healthcare system here or the private doctors, but even the data could be expanded to overseas. And then for Greater Bay Area, Shenzhen, and other cities in Greater Bay Area, there is strong demand for cross-boundary data. So with the development of data centers, I think you could talk to the mainland as soon as possible about the data centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Ng. On how to best leverage technology, the member mentioned about education. Well, there are groups which are facing the digital divide, the elderly. Actually, we are working on that front. I'll defer to the GCIO to supplement. And on civil servants, we are providing training to them to make sure that they advance with the times. Civil servants who have undergone INT training have increased in number, and has the number has grown by 50%. And Dr. Ng referred to medical data. We can explore into that. We can leverage on blockchain technology so that everyone can be in possession of their own medical data. We haven't gone to the level mentioned by Dr. Ng, but anyway, we'll work on that. As for cross-boundary data, we are now actually promoting taking forward cross-boundary e-government. As we want to integrate into the life of GBA, we are exploring on how that cross-boundary e-government services can be provided to residents on both sides. So as for training for civil servants, I'll defer to the GCIO, or rather elderly training. In 2013-14, we started training for the elderly. We have an elderly digital outreach program, and we will go to the residential care homes for the elderly to teach the elderly how to use technology. So we have regularized the program, which has been very popular. We have launched an advanced program on training up the elderly on the digital front. We are liaising with the elderly colleges. Well, we will provide training to the smarter elderly, who then can teach other elderly on the digital issues. And last year, well, in the past couple of years, over 10,000 elderly have benefited from these two programs. And we have also spent $20 billion on the programs. And then we have also a happy learning sort of platform online for the elderly to learn online. So there are 30 modules on this platform for self-learning by the elderly. And recently, because of the epidemic, the training program has been affected, and we have beefed up the online learning platform. Through such platforms, we teach elderly how to use the mobile apps, especially in particular the vaccine pass, Leave Home Safe, e-wallet, digital payment, and digital security, and so on and so forth. So we will continue to strengthen these two outreach programs and training programs. We are also working or liaising with the Guangdong authorities. In terms of data flow, we have discussed about cross-boundary smart city development. We can first work on the free flow of open data, say, for example, traffic data. So we will make transport more convenient at the two places. Well, the format in the two different places may differ, but if we can standardize the format, the exchange will be expedited. Leave Home Safe. Well, I think you have already worked on it. Mr. Peter Xu. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary, you have done a lot after you've been in the post. And during the epidemic, a lot more elderly people are using technological applications. Well, previously, they were very resistant to the idea of using technology applications, and now they are getting more used to it and are aware of the importance of technological applications. So your bureau has come up with a lot of good ideas, and that is a great move forward for Hong Kong. Now, I have a question on smart lampposts. During the Black Cat violence period, the smart lampposts have been vandalized, and the contractor back then said that they would like to withdraw from the project. Now, the government is talking about multifunctional smart lampposts. Well, is there any difference between these lampposts and the lampposts which were vandalized back then? I heard that the lampposts back then can catch drivers speeding. Can the lampposts now have that function? Do that as well? A lot of people are still queuing up for services at government departments. At the transport department, there has been a period of working from home, and people haven't been able to renew their licenses. So I think you can use technology to help you. How can you expedite your efforts in that regard? Thank you for your reminder and your words of encouragement. Well, home office and digital economy. In the past period, because of the epidemic, we have been putting a lot of efforts on leveraging technology to help Hong Kong people apply for services. We have to even further popularize e-government services. 1.3 million people have registered for IM Smart. How can we further use the one-stop personalized digital services platform to help Hong Kong people apply for services? That we have to beef up our promotion. Now, we have to talk further to the transport department, and people have to wait for a long time to get their licenses renewed. So in the future, in the licensing office of the transport department, we will have some counters for registering IM Smart. Now, as for the smart lampposts, can I defer to the GCIO to update you? We are working together with the TD on installing lampposts, including monitoring the traffic situation. We are now replacing the cameras with light detection ranging technology, LIDAR. We can also use thermal sensors. We can monitor the speed, the type of vehicles, traffic flow, and the general traffic situation. All these can be monitored. We will look at the individual needs of the government departments. Well, if they need very precise information, then LIDAR may not be able to achieve that. And then, bearing in mind the concern for privacy, we will consider some other technologies. We are still exploring with the TD on the best technology to be used in the smart lampposts to help with their daily operations. Thank you. Next one, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Ms. Kwok, we have drawn the line. We have gone over time. Sorry. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Chairman, Smart City Blueprint 2.0. Mr. Duncan Chiu has raised a point which I agree to. If we compare Hong Kong's Smart City Blueprint 2.0 to Hangzhou, Shenzhen, and Singapore, we are just a 1.0 or even 0.5. If you look at paragraph 4 and the appendix, we lack a comprehensive plan. We're doing things on a piecemeal approach. These are the individual initiatives. We need a very clear 5-year plan, setting out what you aim to achieve after 5 years. And then second, Smart city is in every related to smart government. It's important to share data, but our understanding that the sharing of data among government departments has run into big problems. Our laws and regulations are outdated. Government departments may collect data for certain purposes and are not sharing them with other departments. But if public interest is at stake, I think data can be shared. Now, if laws and regulations have to be amended, please tell us so. We'll help you with removing the barriers. If you don't take the lead, I don't think the individual government department would do it. And then at the panel meeting this morning, Mr. Edward Lau referred to paragraph 17 and what is about smart village pilots near Shenzhen River in the North District. Some people are on the China telecom networks and they have to pay for roaming service fees. So this is an inadequacy that we have to address. And then about collaboration with the mainland government. Cross-boundary data flow is very important, especially when we want to have mutual access and mutual recognition with the GBA. Now for data, which are related to key infrastructure, while such data should not be allowed to be transmitted across the two places freely. We must work on some network security legislation in order for us to take our work forward. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. First, about the data flow between Hong Kong and the GBA. I think it is important that we have a flow of data between the two places. We have been talking about the flow of people, capital, equipment, and so on and so forth. These are the key areas where we have to work on. And then we must make sure that when we are having such flows of different aspects, the flow is secure. And then the third point is about the smart village pilots and also the relevant issues concerning roaming service and so on. In rural areas, in 5G, the 5G services have yet to be improved. In the next agenda item, the CEDB colleague will update you on the 5G development and they will touch on rural areas situation. And we have launched the Smart Village pilots to expand the 5G coverage areas. We will try to share data within the government as much as possible. Mr. Chen is right in pointing out that we may have our hands tied because of some legal requirements. Maybe we have to come back to the LegCo to seek your support in amending some legislation. Sorry, the speaker is not making through. You have achieved some progress in promoting smart city and digital economy development. I have some views on digital economy. Well, 20 years ago, the mainland has achieved good progress in digital economic development. Now, when we worked on cyber part back 20 years ago, we didn't have Alibaba and Tencent. Now, Hong Kong is going to develop its digital economy. We should not model after China because the world trends have changed. Right now, the new model worldwide is focusing on scientific sectors. So this is very different from the scenario in 20 years ago. New scientific advancement might, form a new industry or a new product, and then the new products may be the basis for forming a new industry. So if we are to develop digital economy in Hong Kong, we have to have a very good top-level design or framework. Now, you are just talking about services in digital economy only. Well, you haven't even come up with a figure of the economic growth to be achieved by developing digital economy. Hong Kong has a lot of good universities and good talents, and we compare favorably in terms of our INT talent with those in the mainland. I think we should try to nurture talents. And in the U.S., they are commercializing their products. They are also focusing on immigration. And Hong Kong, we should do something similar. We should nurture INT talents. We don't even have enough talents to provide services under the digital economy. Now, we lack talents. We have an acute shortage of talents. Well, these are the two suggestions I have. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Professor Sun.
Well, his really good reminders. Now, of course, with any innovation technological development, it's all about talents. How can we make Hong Kong more appealing to talents? How could we take leverage on Hong Kong as an international city to bring talents to Hong Kong? That, of course, would be one of our focuses. But, of course, at the same time, we need to nurture local talents. Now, with the effort of the government and the industry, we are seeing much development in innovation and technology, but then talents are constrained indeed. So how do we create a talent pool that's important? And then as Professor Sun pointed out, as we want to develop digital economy, we have to find our unique path for us leading the technological development. Now, on many different types of technology, we do have edge like mechanical innovation and so on, but then there are other unique advantages that we have, and how do we make leverage on that to further promote our economic development? That's something we are working towards. Thank you. Mr. Oden Chow. Mr. Sid, I can see that you have tried very hard to make breakthroughs. So that's an objective assessment and fair assessment of you. Paragraph 13 in the paper, that's mention of various IT applications during the epidemic. Well, yes, there's the QR code verification scanner is good. But I think the public are really angry because there are still tens of thousands of cases in the backlog waiting for the QR code. Of course, it may have nothing to do with Bureau because the Health Bureau may also possess certain information. But then, as many members pointed out, and including what Mr. Chen Xiu-hong said, if we want really to build Hong Kong into a smart city, you need to, have data connectivity. That's the very first thing. Otherwise, the recovery QR code problem will recur in other areas. Maybe between two different bureau or departments, there is no data connectivity. So you may have a good framework, but you don't have the data. So really, Secretary, I know you are very committed to developing a smart city for Hong Kong. But first and foremost, we need to consider data connectivity and sharing of information. Of course, we have to address the issue of privacy under the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance and so on. Because you may have a good framework, but then if you have no access to the data, really it's a waste of effort. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you. And well, thank you, Mr. Holden Chow, for your views. They're really valid. If we want, we need data first of all to promote services, and then the data must be connected among government departments, and then we have a platform for the use of the data. So we need to make sure that we could make sure there's connectivity and sharing of data. I can assure you that our Bureau is all committed to that. We're sparing no effort in that effort, and apart from doing our part in the Bureau, we will see how we could support the needs of other Bureau and departments to make sure that the whole process is working well. Now, in the past 2 years, in the fight against the epidemic, first, I'm grateful to colleagues for doing their best to do their job. But of course, there's much experience to learn from, and there's room for improvement. So we have paid the price in learning these lessons, and we're not going to let that go to waste. And I'm sure we will do even better in future. Thank you. Last, Mr. Chen Kim Paul. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, we support the development or the building of smart city infrastructure. But that's smart city, we need to build many infrastructures and platforms. But I think you should pay attention to PR and publicity. So people know that as you promote a smart city, it's not about surveillance, but rather is to benefit the public. Now, for the multi-functional smart lamppost, it's been distorted, and so people vandalize and destroy the lamppost because of the distorted information. Of course, they shouldn't do that, but then probably because there was not enough transparency and publicity about the smart lamppost. Also, when people try to distort the functions of the smart lamppost, no one acted to dispel or to clarify the situation, and so it's really a great pity. If there are negative comments, how do we address that? That's important. The I am smart. Well, it's actually quite convenient to use. But then maybe not enough people using it. So when you launch any platforms or apps, you have to consider that the app, say, is somehow related to people's day-to-day lives. Otherwise, people won't be interested. And if something may help someone's health, or it makes the moving about easier, then people, of course, will use it. So please pay attention to these two aspects. If you get the broad principles right, then the details won't be a problem. Thank you for your reminder. Mr. Chen is correct. Whatever we do, say with the IM Smart or other apps, we must make sure that they achieve the purpose of offering convenience to the public. And it's true, as you pointed out, sometimes maybe we have done a good job, but we need to do enough publicity and promotion so the public get to know what the apps are about. So that's something we need to work harder on. And that's why we've been stressing that as we promote Smart City, we have to do more initiatives that could make people feel the benefits. For example, smart villages, because now in remote villages they don't enjoy Wi-Fi services, and if you could make that accessible, then people would see the benefit of a smart city. And then different departments may have their own portals, and then people have to create different accounts with different usernames, passwords. Of course, it's inconvenient, so we need to provide one-stop service, and that's to facilitate the public use of online services. And then, but how do we inform the public about such initiatives? Now that we're back to a rational society, then we will have the time, and then we could make the effort to explain better what we're doing to serve the public. In the past, because of various reasons, maybe we didn't do good enough, but now I certainly will make improvements. Thank you. Now, seems that many members are very keen to ask about smart city that goes beyond my expectations. So we'll see what the government could do. Thank you very much. That's all. So we need to move on to the next item. Thank you for coming to the meeting. So item 4 on the agenda, updates on 5G development in Hong Kong. It's actually related to our last discussion item. Because smart city depends on the right network. And how quickly could a network transmit information and data? That's very important. So, can I invite the relevant government representatives to join us for this item? Welcome, Mr. Clement Leung, Permanent Secretary, and then your colleagues, Mr. Charles Leung, Mr. Keith Keung, and Mr. Sender Churk. I understand you have a PowerPoint presentation. You could get started. Perhaps I will make some short opening remarks before we proceed to the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for giving us the opportunity to update you on the latest development in relation to 5G. Now, 5G, of course, is very important. The digital and communications infrastructure. The service was launched about 2 years ago. In some advanced countries, they're still trying to address the issues of coverage and aviation safety. We've already started 5G commercial service in Hong Kong for 2 years now. During the epidemic, many people relied on remote apps or remote service apps, and then our network has provided a very reliable infrastructure. So now people take such reliable network for granted. 5G now has 90% coverage in Hong Kong. In the major urban locations, the coverage could be as high as 99%. And then in the entire MTR line, all 98 stations, including the latest extension of the East Rail line, in the stations, in the train cars, and so on, they have there is coverage. So that's why the number of users exceeded 3 million. That's 40% of the population. And our 5G coverage is ranked second around the world. So we're doing rather well. In supporting 5G development, we have three-pronged approach. First, to provide sufficient spectrum. Second, we have to facilitate the extension of 5G network by operators. And third, we encourage different sectors to make good use of the 5G. Mr. Senator Churk will be doing a PowerPoint presentation now. Thank you. How long would the presentation be? How long are you going to take? I'll try to be as quick as possible. A few minutes, perhaps. For 5 minutes, because many members would like to speak on the subject, and we started a bit late, sorry. I'll just briefly explain to you the latest the development in relation to 5G, as the Permanent Secretary just pointed out. In the second quarter of 2020, we started commercial 5G services. So far, coverage has been doing well. There is a latest ranking. Hong Kong's ranked second around the world in terms of 5G coverage. As for the number of subscribers to the service, there's been good increase. In less than 2 years, we are now 3 million users, so 41% of the population. That's the penetration rate. So we are ranked among the top both in Asia and in the world. Now we have a free and open telecommunications market, and so consumers could choose different phone models and service providers. There are now more than 110 phone models that price from $1,000 to over $10,000. So it depends on the functions, of course, the positioning of the phone models. There are plenty of models, and then there are different 5G service plans from 8 gigabyte to several hundred gigabyte, and the monthly subscription fee is from $100+ to $1,000. So people have a wide range of choices. To promote 5G development, in the past few years, the government has taken a series of measures. Say with the spectrum, we try to resolve certain technical issues to facilitate the extension of 5G net coverage, and also extension of 5G coverage to remote places and so on. So we'll now look at these measures in detail.
First, about the supply of spectrum. From 2019 to 2021, in these 3 years, the government has assigned a total of 2,100 megahertz 5G spectrum. They are at low band, mid band, and high band frequencies. The quantity is equivalent to 4 times of the 2G, 3G, 4G spectrum. Apart from these newly added 5G spectrum, the operators can, based on the technology neutral principle, refarm their existing 2G, 3G, 4G spectrum for 5G uses. The government has also launched a number of facilitating measures to help the operators to expedite the rollout of 5G networks. In 2019, the government launched a pilot scheme to open up 1,000 government premises at a nominal rent to facilitate the operators to install base stations. And the relevant procedures have been streamlined. And in January this year, because of the overwhelming response, 500 more government premises have been opened up to meet with the operators' needs for installing radio base stations. The government has also launched a number of other measures to use street furniture, for example, public payphone kiosks, shelter bus stops, and also multifunction smart lampposts to install base stations. In addition, the government has amended legislation to streamline procedures for installing metal supporting frames at external walls. And also we enhance the efficiency in the approval process. The OFCA have also set up a user-friendly web-based platform last year for low-power indoor race-based stations to facilitate MNO self-service registration. For remote areas, for example, the new territories and outlying islands, while the network installation or extension may be very costly, and the operators lack the economic incentive to lay the networks and impede the broadband service provision. The government has launched a subsidy scheme to extend fiber-based networks to villages in remote areas. Economic incentives are provided to MNOs, mobile network operators, to extend the network to villages. The subsidized fixed network operators have started laying the network last year. And by 2026, 235 villages in 9 outlying islands and new territory districts will be covered. Upon the completion of these networks, the infrastructure for telecommunications is in place for starting 5G services and mobile services. The government has also implemented policies to encourage wider application of 5G among different sectors to enhance their efficiency, productivity, and quality of service. Under the second round of anti-epidemic fund in May 2020, the government launched the subsidy scheme for encouraging early deployment of 5G. Under this scheme, 200 projects will be subsidized, and the subsidy will cover up to 50% of the project cost, or subject to a maximum ceiling of $500,000. And up to end of April, more than 130 applications have been approved. Let me cite some examples of the approved applications. First is about safety or site management of construction sites. The contractors can send 4K videos to the relevant venues to monitor the site construction situation. For those who haven't worn the safety helmets, they will be detected and then accidents can be prevented. The second example is remote advice and training. Well, through high definition live streaming of the videos, then the videos can be used for teaching purposes. And then the third example is a subsidized Chinese orchestra, and they are using the 5G technology and 4K technology to broadcast the performances to a wider audience. And then another example is a hillfire detection system using AI. And this subsidized body is collaborating with another INT organization to transmit AI videos so that those at the remote locations can detect whether there are any hill fires so that safety can be better safeguarded. Apart from these 4 examples, there are many other examples which can be found on the OFCA's website. In fact, the OFCA has been promoting the development of 5G, and we've been active in our publicity efforts. We have set up a dedicated 5G website, and also we have videos publicizing 5G development for dissemination on various social media platforms. Through lively presentations, we hope to enhance the awareness of the industry on 5G. While looking forward, we will continue to monitor the development of the telecom market, and we would actively launch measures to support 5G development and the continuous development of smart cities. 8 members would like to ask questions. Ms. Lam, Mr. Lam Chen Sing, Ms. Elizabeth Kwok, Mr. Ma Feng Kwok, Professor Nelson Lam, Mr. Duncan Chiu, Mr. Edward Lau, and Mr. Chan Hon Fan. Because of the tight schedule, 4 minutes each for members, including questions, answers. Ms. Nixie Lam, for over the past 2 years, the biggest problem is not about the network coverage, but whether there are problems with disconnection. In many places, there have been consistent disconnection, and black spots have been identified. It's not just the rural areas, highways, MTR stations. Well, these are places where disconnections are rampant. So from Chai Wan to Kowloon Bay, Kam Shan Road to Chin Wan, and then Kam Shan Road and other stations. And then online band is also disconnected, and we are disrupted in the middle of a Zoom meeting. While 90% coverage is good, we should give you an applause, but we should also work on the problem of disconnection. And then Hong Kong people have paid for tunnel fees, but then they are enjoying 3G instead of 5G services, and they're not refunded for the poor service quality. I'm a 5G user. I didn't really feel the difference in switching to 5G in terms of speed. So if we are to build a smart city and IT hub in Hong Kong, we must resolve the problems of disconnection of signals in certain locations? Do we have a solution for these problems? Can we come up with a list of places where disconnection has been a consistent problem? Can you set up a target, say by 2025, you would resolve all the problems related to disconnection of services? Yes, it's about a question about quality. In terms of coverage, Hong Kong ranks top among the different places in the world. But it doesn't mean that we stop there. For the network operators, they are also working hard. They would continuously improve on user experience. Well, do we have a timetable? If users do not have good experience, they will downgrade their service. Well, this is indeed what has happened in some other countries. But in Hong Kong, I think the overall situation is desirable. But individual locations, there may be pain points, so to speak. We try to fix the problem as much as possible. While my colleague referred to external walls, indoor installations, MTR coverage, and also in government buildings, we can make available spots for installing radio base stations. In many public transports, can we come up with a list and a timetable of addressing the problems found in these locations? Do we have a list of the, so to speak, the pain points, so to speak? Chairman, Ms. Lam, in terms of development of the network, that has been going on for 2 years. Well, it will take more time for us to really perfect the system, and we will be urging our operators to make improvement. We are receiving complaints from time to time, and we will come up with a list of complaints which will be handed over to the MNOs, and this list will contain the locations where service disconnections are rampant. Well, it depends on where timing is of essence, because sometimes it's not that they are not willing to install the base stations. It's just maybe there aren't locations available. So we'll help them to install base stations in government premises or government MTR stations. We hope that they can do it as soon as possible. We set a deadline for them. If complaints continue to come in, we will pass on the same to them. And as for the speed, well, it depends on the usage situation. If you are using a large amount of data, then the difference may be more obvious. Can you come up with a list of pain points, so to speak, so we can check on the list once every half year, and then we can monitor you on your progress. So can you consider this? We talk about assignment of spectrum. In June, we would assign the spectrum in the 700 megahertz. Well, it will be more penetrating compared to existing spectrum. So even in hidden areas on that spectrum, then the reception can still be good. So we'll work on that. Next one, Mr. Lam Chen Sing. Thank you, Chairman. The administration has briefed us on the latest development. I have 3 questions. First, in terms of infrastructure for 5G, Hong Kong is doing fine. You said that we have a coverage of 90%, which is we are in the leading position worldwide. As for the blueprint and the overall direction, Nothing specific is set on that. In mainland authorities, they have a plan for 2021 to 23. It said so clearly that 5G can be leveraged to promote modern management and to help with transformation and upgrade of traditional industries. These are in the blueprint. So I would like to know whether we can come up with a clearer blueprint for 5G development in Hong Kong. Second, I would like to know about the utilization of 5G by government departments and private organizations. You said that you would encourage early deployment of 5G technology across government departments and private sector. I would like to know about the progress. The paper mentions about subsidy scheme for encouraging early deployment of 5G. It is under the anti-epidemic fund. The scheme has been extended once. Since it is under AEF, does it mean that when the pandemic eases a bit, then the program will be suspended? Then this scheme covers different sectors, for example, construction sector and hospitals and other Chinese orchestra. And 134 projects have been approved. So should we delink these projects from the epidemic so that if needed, the programs can be extended?
I'll take the third question first about promoting the use of 5G. Well, because of the epidemic and the economy is doing well, so many businesses probably would not invest in other infrastructure. That's why we have this subsidy scheme to speed up upgrading and transformation among businesses. That's why it's put under the anti-epidemic fund. But of course, there's good response for the scheme to the scheme. And if this continues, we could consider providing similar subsidy under other circumstances to encourage businesses to improve their services and the effectiveness or efficiency. Now, at the last item, you talk about digital economy and smart city. 5G is infrastructure strategy. As for the sectors, well, we have subsidy schemes to encourage people to adopt 5G, but of course our system is not the same as that on the mainland because in Hong Kong we're more market-led. And then we work with, say, the Science and Technology Park, Cyberport, or S3 and so on. We have some collaboration with them. So we will just promote. We will promote these services to the sectors. Hopefully, then there will be a bigger take-up rate. But you can see we're doing quite well on the website. You see the different sectors are covered: the financial sector, entertainment sector, healthcare sector, and so on. Now for 5G, there's not yet the killer type application. So on the mainland and here in Hong Kong, we are trying to explore ways to promote not just services but phones, and so we see how much we can do. Next, Ms. Elizabeth Cott. Thank you. Of course, we support the development of 5G. It's an important digital infrastructure for Hong Kong. And we see in the past few years the government's been working very hard to try to boost coverage. Now, coverage is 90%, and that's good. Or even the coverage is 99%. But then as the members of the public mentioned, and some members here also mentioned, say in core business districts, there may be a better network, but once we leave CBDs, there's disconnection, and some complain that they may have paid for a 5G plan, but somehow they don't see that they're getting the 5G speed at home or when they're far away from core business districts, especially for those who are in the rural areas or because of the pandemic, many people have taken up hiking, and so it's not just 5G. They might not get any phone coverage at all. So it shows that most of the base stations are in core business districts or the densely populated areas. It is not desirable. Now, if we want the coverage to be extended to the whole territory, can the government do something about that? Because we need to make sure, say, for example, 5G could also support telehealth services for those living in remote places. So what plans does the government have? Are there any effective means to promote such coverage? And also extension of 5G services to remote areas. Now, we've said this many times. Many village representatives have told us, well, there may be fiber networks extended to villages, and then in the paper you say many could receive the service indoor, but what we learn is that the people have to pay a high price for the connection to be extended to their homes. Otherwise, the fiber network just stops at the boundary of the village. And so how could you make sure there is access to high-speed network services? Because it's still not available in many villages. And only a very few, it's only a handful of villages that's got coverage, many villages still left out. So what plans do you have? Now we have this new technology, and we have, it may, but if it turns out that it would just worsen the digital divide, and is not desirable, because we want everyone to benefit and enjoy the convenience of 5G. Mr. Leung, well, yes, we fully appreciate your concern. In the first few years, things are going well, but we want to make sure that the experience is good for the public. Now, after we have ensured territory-wide coverage, and what the operators do now is to do more to boost coverage, say for places where the reception is poor, and maybe they're using external wall, making use of the small the transceivers and antennas and external walls and so on to improve the transmission of signals. But for remote villages, we have to lay a fiber-based network. It's actually challenging exercise because in some places there are no roads or other infrastructures, and so it will take time. And sometimes also we have to go across country bounds. We need to do environmental impact assessment. At the same time, we also need to lay cables under the sea, in the sea, say to go to Changchao, Pingchao, and so on. So it takes time, and we have now worked on some 40 villages. And it will have to be the end of this year before more villages can be covered. But we are taking that very seriously. We've put in great effort. We want to help villages as far as possible. If there is a fiber-based network at the boundary of the village, and then people could pay a normal fee for connection to that network, and there will be better chance to do that when we have done more. So perhaps we could come back later and see and tell members if we are able to achieve our intended target. Now, for there are actually more choices. There are some, there are home 5G plans. So this is for residential developments where there's no optic fiber network. So then the older buildings or the older districts could be covered by such home 5G service, and that doesn't cost much, maybe $100 or so a month. And then NGOs also give away free products to families in need. So it's a useful scheme. It's not that I'm not going to come back after today's report. When we reach a certain milestone, we'll come back and discuss with you where we could do better. So can I suggest we do that? What do you mean by a milestone? Let's say by around the end of this year, more villages would be covered. So you're going to come back at the end of the year, and for optic fiber-based network scheme and so on. If members don't mind, we can come back and talk to you again. Now you talk about milestone and villages. 235 villages altogether. 235 villages so far. 40 villages are covered. That means it's a long way from a milestone. By the end of the year, we would have covered about half of the villages. There are 760 villages in the new territories. We have selected 200 plus villages without broadband network or optic fiber networks. Now we worked with the Legislative Council, the rural communities, Hancock and so on, before we come up with this list of 200 plus villages. Well, if they plan to come back at the end of the year, can you tell us, can you do a survey on villages with access to the fiber network at the boundary, but then if they can't go into people's homes, then there's no point really. Can you please give us some figures? Next, Mr. Marfong Kwok. I have high expectation of the 5G network. I've waited for 5G network to become more popular or before I used it. So 3 months ago, I bought a new phone and registered for 5G service. Well, on the whole, yes, the connection is faster compared to a phone I bought 5 years ago, but it's not as fast as I've expected. Is it because my phone is not good enough, or is it because of the network? I don't know. Now, in March, there's a survey report on 5G coverage in Asia Pacific. In Hong Kong, 5G download speed is 136 Mbps, but then we are below, South Korea and Singapore and so on. So if our download speed is worse than these places, it's really not acceptable. And then there is this Chinese Academy on communications. Their speed, the network speed is 340 plus, which is more than double the 100 plus speed Mbps speed we have. So do we set any standards for the download speed, and how far off are we on facilitating the rollout of 5G networks? One scheme is to provide a self-service registration platform for low-power indoor radio base stations. So far, there are 150 applications for indoor RBS. So how do we read this figure? Because I see that it's a small number. So what do you mean by a radio base station? Is it one that covers the entire shopping mall, or just each low power indoor radio base stations? Because to me 150 applications seem to be on the low side. How do we read this figure? Perhaps I'll leave the specific questions to my expert colleagues. Mr. Ma said the download speed is not that high. As I explained, it really depends on the applications involved. For example, we're just using WhatsApp or WeChat. You don't really feel the difference in speed. But if you're downloading a huge file, then you could just see there will be a much more visible difference in the download speed. Of course, it also depends where you are. Say if you're in a busy district and there are many people using the same network, or because they're sharing of resources, then the speed would be slower. So if you want to compare Hong Kong with other places, the penetration rate in Hong Kong is going up quickly. And now we're talking about 40% probably. I'm not talking about penetration, I'm talking about download speed, because that's related. Because we're talking about the same resources. If there are many people using the network, and if the penetration rate is just 10% or so, of course there will be fewer people trying to compete for the same resources. But in Hong Kong, we're making progress. Well, yes, we have a high penetration rate and more people using 5G. But at the end of last year, we auctioned the second batch of 5G spectrum, and the second batch is coming into operation gradually. And after that, the 700 megahertz, as mentioned by the secretary, the Prime Secretary, put to use, because it was used for TV transmission. That's the best spectrum. And so if we have this extra spectrum, then that would improve things substantially. And then 5G could be 10 times faster than 4G. And this is about we talk about 26 to 28 gigahertz, but because of semiconductor supply issue, so many manufacturers are producing the slower speed items. If supply resumes normal, and then devices available, then you'll see visible increase in speed and Now, Mr. Ma asked about the 150 indoor radio base stations. Now, in one shopping mall, there may be 1 to 2 base stations with different radio heads. Through full reception radio heads at different levels of a shopping mall. One base station could cover an entire shopping mall, but if it's a huge shopping mall, maybe there will be 2 to 3 base stations. So when you see a small head on the false ceiling, and you say there's one radio base station, but they not necessarily be the case.
You said that more than 150 applications have been processed. So how do you read into that figure of 150? Are you talking about 150 major shopping malls? Or if one shopping mall has 5 base stations, that it means 30 major shopping malls? No, we don't look at it this way. For a medium-sized shopping mall, it maybe 1 base station should suffice. But then for major shopping center, maybe 3 base stations are needed. So we are talking about the number of base stations. So I don't think you're very clear in that. But then colleagues are counting the numbers by the numbers of base stations, and not the number of locations or major or shopping centers or structures. Can you quantify it in a better way? For example, quantify it as certain square meters of space being covered. Can that be done? It will be clearer that way. Can you meet with Mr. Ma's demand, we will check on our information because our technical staff are counting the number of base stations. Okay, we'll look at the number of spots covered. We are laymen. We really don't understand that. We know about these pain points. If these are not the pain points, what is the download speed? And then at the pain points, we know about the speed as well. So we can make comparisons between these two different kinds of locations. So please present it in a way that is understandable. Next one, Professor Nelson Lam. Thank you, Chairman. A lot of questions have been covered by other fellow members. My first question has been raised by Ms. Nixie Lam and Ms. Elizabeth Quat in some rural areas. Not to mention 5G, well, they are not even covered by 3G and 5G. Would you do something in the interim to help? You talk about 700 villages, but only 200 or so will be worked on. What about the remaining? What will you do? I agree with the chairman. We are a layman and we are rather naive. Please don't mind me saying so. I have switched to a 5G handset and I am in support of the technology. Well, I think it works similarly as my 4G handset. If I go on Zoom, well, the connection is disrupted all the time. I don't know whether it's a problem with my handset or 5G. So can you also do more in publicity and public education? Ordinary members of the public have heard the government's promotion message about building a smart city, and I have to buy a 5G handset as well as subscribe to a 5G package. But then when they do that, they can't tell the difference between using this latest technology and the old technology. There are not any mobile apps which are really breakthroughs. So that's why we don't perceive the benefits. And then my data usage plan is 300 gigahertz. But then I'm only using 70 gigahertz. So actually, I'm wasting or squandering some money. So how can you help the ordinary members of the public to say, jump on this bandwagon of 5G development, so to speak? I understand consumers' concern. Ordinary members of the public may not understand too well the technology. So we are working on consumer education, and we ask Hong Kong people to really understand what their real needs are, and they should refrain from buying excessive data. If you are just using your devices at home, then you may have to ask the MNOs their coverage in your particular district. Well, then next comes a question. Your slide shows how many people are using 5G mobile phones, and now you're advising us not to use 5G handsets. No, I'm not saying that. Well, if you ask people to make wise choices, then your penetration rate will not climb further. Now you have to look at your usage before you subscribe to the data plan. If you are just using the service for basic usage, then you don't have to buy a very high-end service plan. Now, I'm asking whether I can subscribe to a plan with lower data usage. They said no, because you may press the wrong button and then you would use up a lot of data. So that's where the problem lies. I support you in promoting 5G technology, but sometimes there may be wastage when it comes to the use of data. Now, there are different service plans now, and some of them are offering, say, 8 and 30 gigahertz in data. But then these are very different from service plans with several hundred gigabytes in data usage. So through social media and other publicity channels, we hope to educate the public more. So when Hong Kong people subscribe to the service plans, they should make more inquiries and consider where they live in, where their office is, and so on. And if they live in remote areas, they may not be covered by the 5G network. Now, once all the works have been completed, we believe that there will be improvements. Last year, Dr. An Zhang, before she ceased to be a electrical member, well, that was an earlier time of the rollout of the 5G. She didn't feel the difference in subscribing to the 5G service. We are all laymen, and I'm on 5G, but sometimes the download speed is quite slow. You may do a lot of explanations, but from my perspective, I'm paying a lot for the 5G package, but then I don't see the difference or feel the difference. Well, let me say this. The Ofcare has our own app, and then by using this app, you will know the download speed in the location that you are in. And I've tried to learn about the download speed at electrical, my office, Sham Shui Po, and Central, and so on. So you'll be able to know the download speed. And Central, it's a very high speed, 400 Mbps. And for more distant places, 100 or so, much lower. So you can try to use that app to get a feel of the infrastructure that we have put in. Well, I will extend the meeting by 15 minutes. 4 members have yet to ask a question. Well, you have a AI-assisted hill fire detection. Let me declare that I'm related to that. And then on the question of coverage, Ms. Elizabeth Quat raised a point, which is also mentioned by Professor Nelson Lam, and that is about extending the fiber-based network only up to the entrances of the villages. And in the last term, the electrical papers have talked a lot about this issue. How should we expedite the extension work? Can you come back with a timetable on when you can complete the works? And then sometimes the villages may are not willing to follow up, and then there are certain gaps to be filled. Now, Hong Kong have 1,000 parks and 400 gazetted beaches. Would you also consider covering them? And there is another blind spot. The Chinese tenement buildings without owners' corporations. During the epidemic, we have been delivering supplies and the 5G cards to the Chinese tenement buildings. But even with those cards, they couldn't. They are not covered by 5G, so that's no use at all to them. And then, apart from these places, there is an issue about fiber to the home, and that is a requirement in design of buildings. And we have asked for fiber-based networks to be extended to buildings. Do you have the super broadband buildings in Thailand and South Korea? And actually, the fiber-based networks actually get into the individual household and not just the building. And then we are not doing that. Now, if the private developers would like to do better, then it's really up to them. But that is not a standard requirement. In new development areas, in Kai Tak, there are a lot of new buildings, and in other new development areas, can you require the property developers to extend the fiber-based network to the individual households.
On Mr. Chew's question, for fiber to the home, say in some European Union studies, Hong Kong is among the top 10 in terms of coverage. But of course, for the general public, I don't care about the ranking. If I can't use it, I can't use it. And we are aware of that, of course. And what our biggest effort is not spent on the top 99%, but the last 1%. So we want to focus on the 1% that has no access. For new development areas or development or new buildings, we, in terms of ducting, there is now a requirement to reserve ducting space, and we want competition, so it's not just exclusive to one contractor. So this is make sure the prices are good, reasonable. And of course, many members talk about the rural areas, maybe in places where there is not a good infrastructure. Well, this is actually the focus of our work. And as I said, the biggest effort has not been on the first 90%, but the last 1% or 0.1%. So we're working very hard on that through subsidy schemes. So we're well aware of that. I wonder if the Director General has anything to add. For smart buildings or new development areas, for smart buildings we have labeling scheme. That is fiber to the building or fiber to the home. Fiber to the building, that means the fiber network extends to the just the building, but fiber to the home, that means there's fiber network to each unit. So if developers choose to do that, it could include a label to tell consumers that this is a smart building. So this is something we have done, and we will continue to promote this scheme. I think for buyers, that probably would be appeal. That is, if there's fiber to the home or fiber to the building, then people would think that the unit price is more worth it. So we will promote this among developers so that they will do something at the stage of construction with the fiber network. Do you have figures on the fiber to the home? Well, we do have some figures. Say for fiber to the home and fiber to the building together in Hong Kong, it covers actually 80%. And the Permanent Secretary was right to point out we have many high-rises. So that's why many high-rises, they do have a fiber network. But then in rural housing or the older buildings, of course, they don't have the network. But then, but they are, there are few of those, relatively speaking. But 80% of buildings do have a fiber network coverage. Next, Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, listening to your presentation and the reply to members' questions, I can see that you need to change your mindset with 5G network building. You're just relying on network operators to provide the network. And for remote areas, because there is small population, there is no incentive to operators. So the government is offering a subsidy scheme. Still, then, it's up to operators to extend the network. Now, there's going to be the Northern Metropolis. If you go, you can come with me to visit the New Territories North. Where you plan to build the Northern Metropolis now, we don't have 5G coverage, we don't even have phone coverage, and if we get signals, it's from the mainland. So you want to develop New Territories North, you want reindustrialization and so on. You can't even provide the basic facilities or services. So how do you propose to proceed with that, such development? I think with 5G or digital development, it should be seen as the same as infrastructure, like a railway network, sewage system, and so on. These should, be a part of the infrastructure. We shouldn't just leave it to network operators. Shouldn't the government take up the task and provide the network? So you have to provide the telecommunications and other networks, and then say if I move to the new territories north for reindustrialization or whatever, then all the facilities would be, the infrastructure would be in place. So would the government change your mindset? Instead, you will take up the task of providing the necessary network. Well, all along in Hong Kong, the telecommunications networks were provided by private operators. Well, for this term of government, we've actually changed our mindset already. In the past, we wouldn't subsidize network operators to extend their network coverage because they have their own capital investment plan. Maybe sometimes they will move quicker, sometimes slower. But for this term of the government, because of our new mindset, we know that there won't be financial incentives to extend the network coverage to remote areas. That's why we have introduced a subsidy scheme, and we have asked for funding from the Finance Committee to start the subsidy scheme. And then, therefore, the 5G network could be rolled out to places with less incentive. And then, of course, there will be the North Metropolis plan, and definitely we will make sure we support that effort with the necessary network initiative. So there will be initiatives so that network operators will roll out their network to major development areas. But of course, we leave it to private operators to build their network. But in terms of in plowing of resources, the government will play the role of facilitator. It's not just about spending money. Say you want to build a base station in the new territory. I went with the telecoms operator, say it's a remote area, and we try to find a spot when there are other various departments standing in the way, such as the agriculture, fisheries, and conservation department. So it's not just about investing money. If you just rely on private operators, they can't move really quickly. In some places, 5G development occupies a strategic position, or even it involves national defense. So we need to change your mindset. That's why I say we're not just talking about an act of an individual, but rather it's about strategic. It's about the strategic importance as part of the infrastructure. Yeah, I think you've got the message. Yes. We'll talk to the member concerned about a specific location. So that means more involvement on our part to make things happen. And departments should not be standing in the way. So yes, we have already resolved many issues. Now it's already 6:37. I don't want to extend the meeting further. I hope we could finish before 6:45. Mr. Chen Hak-fong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick point. I totally agree with Mr. Edward Lau. You need to change your mindset about the provision of telecommunications infrastructure. If you leave it to the market, they will only provide a network if it's profitable. Now, with rural areas, the operators will always give the lowest priority. Why? Because it's not profitable, and central districts will always be first on the list. So if you don't resolve the matter, there will always be the digital divide for those living in remote areas. So you need to do more, and you could move bolder. You could first provide infrastructure, and then you could lease it out to operators on a bidding basis. For example, if you ask the market to provide the infrastructure, there is a real issue about land ownership issue. So it's not just about providing fiber to the village. Can you say leave it to departments, for example, the Environment Bureau or the Highways Department, maybe on Lamppost, the infrastructure could be provided and people could just make the connection to the Lamppost. It will, then there will be a smaller demand for investment this way and the use of public resources, really. Now, you've always talked about the benefits of 5G, but if you're using a mobile phone, you don't really tell the difference between 4G and 5G services. I think 5G matters in commercial users. We can't see that in Hong Kong, but maybe on the mainland we see it. For example, the automatic or delivery devices, application in farming and so on, then they can see the benefits of 5G. But in Hong Kong, we need to subsidize more projects. Maybe then universities, there should be research projects, even a whole new department. So that is what we call innovation. In Hong Kong, with promoting innovation and technology, you always leave it to the market. So the market will only act on projects that are profitable. But then who would have thought, unmanned drones would become so profitable? That's why DJI left Hong Kong to go back to the mainland. So we can't just leave it to the market. Then we will always lose out on opportunities. Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Chen for his views. We are working on several fronts. Though the government does not have the experience of running a network, if you ask us to run a network and then lease it out to a contractor, is really not realistic, I'll be honest with you. We really have to support the work of the operators for the best result. Now, what we're doing is we're offering a subsidy. We've introduced a subsidy scheme, but we are closely monitoring development to see where there is need to offer more incentives. Because we are talking about a business, we have to consider the interests of villagers. We have to deal with the land issues. And then perhaps on existing infrastructure such as bus stops and smart lampposts, we could provide the network. And then when the fiber network could reach the village, then there are many more choices to the residents. So we do make use of existing infrastructure. We'll explore that further. And then we'll work with the Science and Technology Park and so on. So we don't just look at the application in other places. Of course, we will see, learn from the experience on the mainland. But then we, in Hong Kong, we'll see if some of the schemes work. Yes, we get that, Permanent Secretary. 2 minutes for Mr. Hu Chow. A very quick point, because many members have already raised many of the points. You say you'll come back at the end of the year, so maybe every 6 months you could give us an update about 230 villages. So you need to give us a report every 6 months, because the scheme will go up till 2026. So maybe you can come back every 6 months to give us an update. And then if you read documents from last month, you see that the fiber only reaches the village. It can't really get into the village. And you can't, even if you want, you can't provide additional support. Now, members have already explained all the issues, so can you come up with some new ideas? Maybe can you help with extending the fiber network from the village to homes? I think that's a point many members have raised. Yes, we got that. Chairman, I think we have to look at the progress. When there's notable progress, then we could come back for a report. Otherwise, it's a waste of your time. And please don't get the impression that our work ends when the fiber network is extended to the village. But actually, our office does help with resolving actual issues, say with the rural committee, and so we try to resolve disputes, and hopefully we can look after the interests of villagers. But it's hard to just talk about it in an abstract manner. If there are specific cases, we will work together with the villagers, the village representative, the rural committee, and so on to resolve matters. We hope that we could resolve matters that way. Thank you. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. Maybe next time you can give us an update. There are 20 seconds left. I think we have a very good discussion, and we use up all the time schedule. End of any other business, nothing on the OB, so meeting is adjourned. Thank you.